Okay, in this video we're going to discuss the ports button. Now I should point out right now we start with the home button, and what you want to do when you're using the user interface is go right down and read it like a book. So you start at the top, home, and work your way to the bottom right. It'll be consistent across all the different user interface elements. So in this case we started in the home, that's where we always start, and you have to go somewhere from home, so let's go to ports. So we're going to move down to the next button, so that's the next step in configuring the unit. So we're going to tap the port button and it brings you over to the port A settings. Now the buttons on the top you see A and B. If I was to tap B, I would be connected to the B port. The A and the B port are actually two separate test sets. So the B port is a dedicated loopback port, and I'll show you how that works here in a second. And then port A is for configuring port A. So in this case I'm looking at my drop down arrow and I'm going to start reading it as a book, top to bottom. And I see that I'm on copper 1 gig. If I wanted to change that interface that I was attached to, I would just press the button and a little pop-out menu would pop over, and now I can select either copper 10 meg if I was still on an older circuit, copper 100 meg, copper 1 gig, fiber 1 gig, or fiber 10 gig. So that's how I direct to using which port. I'm going to go ahead and leave this on copper 1 gig. That's what we'll use for our testing to be consistent. And then depending on the switch, most switches are set for auto negotiate, full duplex, all modern switches, flow control. So I strongly recommend just leave those on the default. Don't change them unless you have an older switch that you have to force to have auto negotiate off, or full duplex to half duplex and on a 10 meg circuit. So you don't have to worry about that. Route A to B is a advanced multiplexer. Allows you to actually drop and insert traffic from port A to port B. So this works really nice as a media converter. For example, say you wanted to come in on fiber on port A and go out copper on port B. This allows you to do that. So now you can actually make a media changer using the DataScout as well. Also, another application, say that you're trying to use your laptop on a company network, but the switch only has optical ports. Now you could use the A to B mode to plug in optical on port A and then use your laptop and plug into port B, and you would be able to connect the network. Works the same way on 10 gig. If port A is set to 10 gig, you can drop out up to 1 gigabyte of data out of a 10 gig pipe over to the other port, over the B port. So you could even connect your laptop to a 10 gig circuit as well. So that's how the A to B works. SFP info and laser on, that works when you're attached to the fiber ports. So for example, I'll just go ahead and tap copper 1 gig, and I'm going to go over to fiber 1 gig, and we'll get a couple warnings because it's saying, hey, your port B is set to copper here. Okay, so we dropped out there. Now what we can do is we can say SFP info, and when I tap SFP info, I'm going to get a pop-up and it shows all the information for that SFP, if there's a diagnostics channel available on the SFP or SFP Plus. And so you can see exactly what type of SFP it is, what brand it is, what the temperature is, and you can actually scroll down and see additional data here. So there's a lot of data. Any data that's available on the diagnostics channel, if the SFP or SFP Plus supports it, we'll be able to see right here. Sometimes it doesn't read the SFP information, the SFP doesn't reply back. So if these fields are blank, what you want to do is just press refresh, and what that will do is it'll force the SFP to respond back and populate that data. If you do that and it doesn't reply with information, more than likely your SFP doesn't have a diagnostics channel, and you're just not going to be able to get that information. So again, to close out the screens, all we do is we just tap the X button to close out, and now we come back to our main screen. Turning on and off the laser. So a lot of times you want to turn off the laser for safety, just in case. You don't look into the optics, or as you're connecting, you want to be able to turn your laser off. So in this case, I'm going to hit laser on, and it changes it to laser off. We get a little warning, and then what we see is our link goes down because we've turned off the laser. Now I'll go ahead and turn that back on again, so that we have that. Shows that we're turning it back on again. So that's port A, and I'm going to go ahead and put this back to copper 1 gig, so that way When we go to the other port, we don't get warning messages that we're not connected to the same port. So I'll just go ahead and select that. Okay, so we're back there now. And notice now that we're reconnecting, the auto negotiate comes up 1 gig. So to get to port B, and remember port B is a dedicated loopback port, so if I tap on port B, now I get a different screen. And what it's showing is that the AB or LAN 1 mode is active because I pressed the AB mode before. But when we're in loopback mode, what we're seeing is that we're having, if there was incoming traffic coming into port B, anything that's coming in that matches the MAC address would automatically be swapped and sent back out again, standard reflector. And you can get all the information on your screen down below about the number of frames coming in, how many are being sent back. You can also turn off the loopback. So if you don't want port B to be reflecting data, just press the loopback on, it'll change it off, and it turns off the loopback mode so that it will not respond back to any frames. You can also set up for a layer 3 loopback by tapping the swap IP address. So now what's going to happen is anything that matches the incoming MAC address and IP address of the test port will automatically be reflected back. Auto loop, this is the advanced loopback feature, and we'll get into this a little bit more when we get down to the loopback for port A. But it gives you the ability to remotely loop up and loop down port B. And so this auto loop on tells the device that if I send a loopback query out through the network and port B is connected to the network, if it receives that query, it will respond back and allow a far end device to loop it up or loop it down. So that's what auto loop means. Now, if you do not want to accept queries and allow the machine to be looped up or looped down, what you do is you just tap auto loop, turn it off, and then that would prevent a far end device from looping it up. By default, we come on because this is a very handy feature. Promiscuous mode, when promiscuous mode is on, any type of test traffic coming in, or any type of traffic, I should say, coming in, will be automatically reflected back. You want to be cautious using promiscuous mode because it is a true reflector. Anything that comes in will be reflected back out with the source and destination address swapped. That means keep alive frames on your network will be reflected back. And it could put the port into an administrative shutdown mode because it sees that there is traffic coming back and it looks like a loop routing condition. So I just want to point out you want to be careful of that. By default, what you see here is the way we set up. When you're in through mode, what that does is it allows anything coming into A goes to B. Clear stats, as you're receiving test traffic, if I press clear stats, it'll clear out that traffic and restart the counters again. And of course the SFP info, laser on, laser off, the copper, the fiber, all that is exactly the same as port A. The last thing I want to point out, when you're in port B is a dedicated loopback mode. So if you were to try and tap the select test button, it's not going to do anything because the only test it supports is loopback. So just note that if you tap the select test button and it doesn't do anything, that's correct. Okay, I think we've covered everything now in the A and B ports button, so we'll stop here and then we'll move on to the next video and we'll start talking about individual tests.